back in order. Members, before we get back into the agenda, I'm going to address 2 points. One is a complaint that has been made online on X or Twitter, started earlier today, has been continuing throughout the morning from the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus that they feel they have not had ample opportunity to be heard in testifying in this hearing. So I'm going to tell you this. My understanding is there were 8 bills that they requested the opportunity to testify in. Test it? I'm not going to start over because I just turned on the mic. Before we start on the agenda, I'm going to tell you something with regard to this hearing. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus is complaining online, starting on X, certainly this morning, actually yesterday evening, I understand, by email, that they have not had ample opportunity to testify as a voice at these hearings, or at this hearing today. And I'm going to tell you what I understand to be the case of the 8 bills that are on our agenda that they specifically requested the opportunity to testify on. One was removed from the agenda because it's going to be heard on a different day. Of the other 7, the Gun Owners Caucus was given live testimony opportunity at this hearing for 5 of them. There was another one in which another lobby group wanted to testify, and the others, citizens who had wanted to testify, were given the opportunity to testify instead. And yet I'm still receiving complaints online, amplified, video to follow, that kind of thing, about us trying to shut down the voice of the Second Amendment at the Capitol. First of all, let me assure you, they are not the only voice at the Capitol advocating to protect the Second Amendment. I get a lot of input from a lot of different organizations on all sides of this issue. Second of all, I'm going to tell you something that was posted in direct reply to the Minnesota Gun Caucus and to me. I'm going to quote, "I'd like to say what Latz deserves, but I'd catch a ban." Anyone else in this room perceive that as a threat against the chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee in the Minnesota Senate? I'm not going to identify the poster on this, but I will assure you that that poster's information, a screenshot of this, has been forwarded to Capitol Security and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and they will do whatever is necessary to follow up on that threat to a member of the state Senate. This will not be tolerated to any member. I don't care what part of the issues they are on. If you receive threats online, turn it over to Capitol Security, the State Patrol. It goes to the BCA. And if the Gun Owners Caucus has any further complaints about somehow being shut down in a public hearing where they are testifying on at least half of the bills or many of the bills that we are hearing, and members, you've all got their written stuff here in our packets that get sent out, at which basically they get up and read what they've already submitted in writing. You got any complaints, you can come talk to me directly in person. I'm going to leave it at that. Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chairman, I want you to know that I agree with you entirely. No member of the Minnesota Senate or in the House should receive any threat from anyone regarding any issue. We are still a nation of law. This is how law is created. And it appears as though throughout the United States, there seems to be a disregard for the making of law. And if we disregard the making of law, our whole democracy and republic is in danger. I agree with you and I stand with you regarding the comment about the threat, and I thoroughly back you up.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. And this is not lost on me that this threat was made by a Second Amendment advocate who presumably has a permit to carry, or one would hope, if this person is carrying, that it's being done lawfully. But I don't want to hear anyone else ever come up to this testifier table and tell me that Second Amendment advocates are all completely law-abiding and non-threatening and non-violent, because I got the written proof right here that that's not true. And I'm not casting aspersions on all Second Amendment advocates, but I'm saying that there are those out there that don't seem to care a whole lot about the safety side of carrying a firearm, or at least willing to make threats about it. All right, next up on the agenda. Senator Draheim has been patiently waiting online during this proceeding for Senate File 3648, relating to additional school safety specialists and an appropriation. Senator Draheim, are you with us?
I am, Chair.
Welcome to the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. You probably are hoping that this is your first and last appearance since you are retiring at the end of this term. But we welcome your testimony and your support for Senate File 3648. Go right ahead, Senator. Senator, your net worth bandwidth is low.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to do this remote so I can hit my district meetings also, Chair. Senate File 3648, I'll be real quick. It's $1 million in fiscal year 2026 appropriated from the general fund for 8 school safety specialists at the Minnesota School Safety Center. Currently, the School Safety Center is housed in the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Division of the Department of Public Safety and has 8 full-time equivalent employees. One of their most important roles is helping schools evaluate their buildings for security. It serves as a free resource for our K-12 public, private, public charter, and tribal schools across the state. Their mission, Chair, is to assist schools to prepare for, respond to, and recover from all hazard emergencies for providing information, guidance, and training, technical assistance, etc. I think it's really important. We passed this with your help out of the Senate back in 23. It got stripped out in conference committee. So it is one-time funding, and I'm sure DPS would like ongoing funding, Chair, but you know, we're doing the best we can with the resources we have. That's it.
Thank you, Senator Draheim, and this has had bipartisan support over the years. Senator Clausen was a strong advocate and funded some of the positions, the permanent positions of this nature as well when he was serving in the Senate. I don't have any testifiers signed up to speak to this, so we'll ask if there's any member amendments or discussion from members of the committee. I'm not seeing any. Do you have any closing comments, Senator Draheim? Members of
No, I know you have a busy day. I just appreciate the time and the consideration. Thank you.
Senator Limmer, would you like to make the motion on this?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer moves that Senate File 3648 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate Committee on Finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Draheim. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you.
Senator Cwodzinski. Senate File 3572. Senator Cwodzinski, go ahead and introduce your bill, tell us what it does, and then we'll hear from your testifiers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. I'm here to present Senate File 3572, a bill that would modify where and when firearms are going to be permitted on school property. First, this bill would require that firearms, when in a vehicle located on school property, must be unloaded, secured in a locked container or safe, and placed in the locked trunk compartment of a vehicle. This would extend those storage protections to Minnesota High School League sanctions events, even if the events are off school grounds. Secondly, the bill would remove the exception that allows a school principal to give permission for any person to carry a firearm within school facilities. School administrators already have enough on their plate without making them the gatekeepers of who is and isn't allowed to have a firearm on school property. So that's basically the bill. But before we hear from our testifiers, I just want to say, first of all, happy semi-quincentennial members. It's the word of the year. It means the 250th anniversary of this great nation. So semi-quincentennial. I do have to say that I am probably the only person in this room right now that had the horror, if you will, of walking into a classroom after passing time or walking into a classroom after lunch and announcing to the students that we had another Columbine today, or we had another Red Lake today, or we had another Rocori today, or we had another Sandy Hook today, or we had another Virginia Tech today. And when you, as the adult in the room, make that announcement to over 30 young people, I wish I had a hidden camera to be during those moments that I put behind me so that I could show you the faces of those young people. And the looks on their faces are like, you adults, haven't you figured this out yet? Can't you keep us safe? Our dads and uncles came home from Vietnam with post-traumatic stress. I shouldn't be coming home from school with post-traumatic stress. And these are the looks. And we often hear after another school shooting, we're giving our prayers and our thoughts are with the survivors and the victims, but there's really nothing we can do. And I think those words we heard when we had to come up with a vaccine for polio, there's nothing we can do. And we heard those laws when we had to come up with ways to keep people in their cars instead of being thrown out the windshield before seat belts. And we heard those words, there's nothing we can do with respect to people dying from secondhand smoke. And we heard those words, there's nothing we can do when we wanted to land on the moon and we wanted to liberate Europe. There were those that said there's nothing we can do. And yet, people before us came up with things we could do. And right now, we hear a lot about the MAGA movement, Make America Great Again. And I don't think we can have mourning in America until we stop mourning in America. And that innocent lives are repeatedly getting lost. The number one cause of death in this great, great nation by birth to 21-year-olds is firearms, the number one cause of death. And we are just saying there's nothing we can do. And if FDR was alive today and he gave his For Freedom speech, which he gave during the height of all the horrors that were going on in Europe, and he told the American people, these are the four things Americans believe in. It's freedom of speech, and freedom of worship, and freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And he depicted freedom from fear. Norman Rockwell's masterpieces, when he depicted freedom from fear, he depicted a family tucking in their young kids into bed. Freedom from fear. And I think if Norman Rockwell was alive today and he had to depict freedom from fear, I think he would paint that photograph of that mom running into Annunciation. I don't want to ever have another teacher walk into a classroom and say to the students, we had another Columbine today. And whatever I can do in my time here to prevent that would be the icing on the cake of a wonderful, wonderful 10 years in my life. And so with that, I've got two wonderful testifiers. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski. Sheriff Witt.
Good afternoon. I'm Dewana Witt, Sheriff of Hennepin County, and thank you for having me here today. I'm proud to support this bill to establish uniform storage requirements for firearms on school property. Last August, a group of high school students from Edina School came to my office to talk to me about this idea. I've also discussed gun violence with my Youth Community Advisory Board, which consists of 10th through 12th graders all throughout Hennepin County schools. in an exercise we did, asking them what are the most important things to them or what are they concerned about, they all had in their top 3 kids who don't even know each other, guns, gun violence. This bill is clear and practical for both schools and law enforcement. It creates consistent expectations statewide, which makes compliance easier and law enforcement more fair. As a former school resource officer, I can tell you that inconsistent gun policies from one school to another can create problems for law enforcement. This law would help create a clear standard for the public to follow and our agencies to enforce. Safe storage laws address one of the most common pathways by which guns end up in the wrong hands, and let me say that again, the wrong hands. The theft of unsecured firearms. And vehicles are a primary source of stolen guns used in crimes, a trend that has been significantly increasing over the past decade. In 2025 alone, my agency alone seized 697 illegally possessed firearms. And there are more than 1,700 guns that are stolen across Minnesota each year, most of which are from vehicles. I believe that we can significantly reduce this problem, and I am confident that if passed, the bill we are discussing today will save lives. The wrong thing to do is nothing. Our kids are dependent on us, and it is up to us to make sure that we keep them safe, free of anxiety, and free of fear of someone bringing a firearm on at their schools to use against them. For that reason, I support it and urge you to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time out of your busy.
Thank you, Sheriff. Aditi Jha, student from Edina High School. And since I represent part of Edina, I'm especially pleased to have you here today.
Thank you. Members of committee, last August at Annunciation School in Minneapolis, when gunfire erupted during Mass, older students shielded their younger classmates with their own bodies, pushing them under pews to protect them. Their courage should inspire all of us. But students should never have to protect each other from gun violence. That responsibility belongs to the adults in this room. As students, worries about security affect our ability to focus and learn in school. We should be thinking about the history test next week, not if another lockdown could mean that we can't see our loved ones again. Like Sheriff Witt just said, cars are one of the most common places where guns are stolen from. This bill is not about taking away anyone's rights. Rather, similar to seatbelt requirements, it just closes one of the most preventable gaps in public safety. I understand that all of us care about student safety, and some may think that safe storage would render firearms inaccessible to quickly defend against a possible school shooter. But while the theory of self-defense is a popular one amongst gun rights advocates, we know from statistics that it never goes beyond a theory. Defensive gun uses occur in fewer than 1% of all crimes, and 80% of these uses are against people who don't have a gun. So not only do we know that self-defense against a shooter is rare, but law enforcement agrees it is also more harmful. You are less likely to avoid injury if you respond to a threat with a gun. Even if you believe none of that proven research, there are several affordable safe storage options available online that provide only the gun owner, not anybody else, access to their firearm in mere seconds, meaning they could absolutely still defend themselves on the 0.2% chance that it is necessary. If you want to best protect students, you can absolutely do so, but only by creating guardrails for responsible gun ownership through safe storage. You all represent the brave people of Minnesota. When our students are in danger, you are expected to stand up and act. The leading cause of death for teens has been firearms for the last 6 years, like Senator Cwodzinski said. Protect our students and vote yes on safe storage.
Thank you, Ms. Jha. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah.
I got it right? Okay. We now have two public testifiers, one pro, one con. We're going to start with Maya Olson, Director of Independent School District 271, I understand. Did I pronounce the name right? This is a surprise?
I'll write you a pass.
No. All right, and then after that, we will have Anna Leamy from the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just need to pull this up because I thought there was not time for me to testify today.
Oh, well,
That's what I was told, so
well, we do have time. We welcome your testimony.
that's great, thank you.
So you can take your time, get what you need in front of you.
Okay, thank you. I sent it in to, can you help me? I sent it into, no, I mean, I sent it into who? To,
I thought you were asking me for advice on.
no, I sent, okay, well, I'll just.
Senator Cwodzinski can ad lib for you if you wish.
No, I had sent it in, so I thought.
Oh,
that
we have objections, sorry. Ms. Olson, go ahead.
I sent it in as written testimony. Okay, so my name is Maya Olson, and I am on the Bloomington Public School Board. I've been elected 2 times. I'm also a substitute teacher for 30 years. And I have been experiencing lockdown drills as a substitute teacher for far too long with students of all ages. That includes pre-K through, thank you, Bonnie. That includes pre-K through middle school. And that includes students with special needs, students in wheelchairs, students with sensory issues, and students who have already experienced a background of trauma. As a teacher and as a school board member, I must consider safety needs of our students as a #1 priority. These roles, in addition to having once been a parent of school-age children, have made me unable to understand why we must continue to teach students how to react to school shootings while legislators with the power to actually help prevent school shootings have continued to fight over any new legislation. I am grateful that you are all here today, allowing for a hearing on the topic of safe gun storage on school property. Thank you. There are many preventative measures that we can take to make our schools safer, and safe firearm storage is one of them. As long as our state is normalizing gun ownership, and gun ownership is consistently on the rise, we must normalize safe gun storage and update our gun storage laws. I hold no magical thinking that gun violence will end with the passing of this or any new laws. However, it is our job as leaders, educators, and adults to do everything we can to protect the lives of our students. Doing nothing takes away their belief in us, which is why so many of them are stepping up to do something about it themselves. And it is why legislators are hearing from students concerning this bill. Please pass SF 3572 and show them that you are listening. Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't ready.
Thank you, Director Olson. Appreciate you being here today. We'll now invite Anna Leamy to come forward.
Mr. Chair, member of the committee, my name is Anna Leamy, Director of Government Relations and Advocacy for the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. I was also not aware there would have been time to testify on this bill, so I will keep it brief. Senate File 3572 eliminates an existing and carefully structured provision of Minnesota law that allows a law-abiding permit to carry holder to carry on K-12 school property, but only with the express written permission of a school principal or superintendent. This is not a loophole, it is not unregulated, and it is not reckless. It is a discretionary decision made by school leadership on a case-by-case basis involving individuals who have already undergone background checks, training, and vetting under Minnesota Permit to Carry statute. Senate File 3572 removes that discretion and replaces it with a blanket prohibition, even where a school's own administration has determined that allowing a specific trained, law-abiding adult to carry is appropriate. Permit holders in Minnesota pass criminal background checks, they complete certified training, and they are vetted by their county sheriff. This bill would disarm vetted lawful adults, including potentially parents, school staff, or community members who have obtained explicit permission from school leadership. For these reasons, I urge you to vote no on 3572. I would also like to say that the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus does not support any form of threats to any elected officials or anybody. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Ms. Leamy. I wish that your online postings did not gin up the incentives and encourage the kind of intensity that leads to these threats online, because I've read what your organization is posting as well, and it doesn't de-escalate anything. It escalates very directly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do have a question for you, though, because your testimony submitted in writing, which is also in our packets, and you just stated this is a blanket statewide prohibition. The legislation that I have in front of me is not a blanket prohibition. It states that a person who is authorized to carry a firearm on school property pursuant to paragraph F of the statute, which is Minnesota Statute, Chapter 609.66, Subdivision 1D, and then describes when they are no longer in an eligible on-duty status or not participating in that portion of the activity for which firearm possession is authorized. So it sounds to me like for those who do have authorization under statute, they would still be allowed to carry firearm on school property. Is that not your understanding?
I believe there was language in the bill that was stricken to remove the ability for a principal or superintendent to allow carry on schools.
Senator Cwodzinski.
That's accurate.
Yes, that is correct. But
Nor superintendent, and then, yes, that's accurate.
But
But
that-
law enforcement can clearly, obviously enter the school grounds.
right, so existing statute, which is not stricken, allows active licensed peace officers, military personnel, or students participating in military training who are on duty performing official duties. Persons authorized to carry a pistol under 624.714 while in a motor vehicle or outside of a motor vehicle to directly place a firearm in or retrieve it from the trunk or rear area of the vehicle. Firearm safety or marksmanship courses or activities conducted on school property. Possession of dangerous weapons, BB guns, or replica firearms by a ceremonial color guard. And then it does not apply also to guns or knife show held on school property. So it seems like there are still already enumerated provisions in statute that would authorize. So the blanket has some holes in it, it seems. But yes, it would remove the authority of the school officials to grant additional permission to others to carry on school property. Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff Witt has a comment.
Sheriff.
Yes, I think it's important to note is we need to be thinking about when those firearms are not on people. That is when they're being stolen. With being a firearm owner comes great responsibility. That includes when it is not on your person, it should be secured, keeping it free or at least more difficult from those who should not have them. One of the things that we do know is when people see that guns are banned on premises, they commonly lock them up in their cars. There are people that sit around and pray and watch for that. We need to do something about that. Again, if you're responsible enough to legally carry a firearm, you should be responsible enough to legally secure it, to keep it out of the hands of those that should not have them. And that, to me, is just common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leamy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Cwodzinski.
Well done.
Hey, I'm new here, guys. I'm trying. So I want to clarify, this bill does do what the testifier was saying. It does remove anybody but law enforcement from being able to carry on the school grounds, correct?
Current law says a principal can make an exception, and this would remove that exception that principals can make. Under Article 13 of the Minnesota State Constitution, we have the duty to create a general and uniform system of public schools. And I think Sheriff Witt mentioned that it's difficult for law enforcement to not know what the policy is in a particular school, and this would just create every school in the state has to have the same policy.
Okay.
Senator Holmstrom.
I have a question for somebody in the audience. We used to have a testifier here from the NRA about some claims that were made by an earlier testifier on the efficacy of, the exact words were defensive use is simply a theory, and I guess I'd like to hear their position on whether or not that is accurate.
Senator Holmstrom, I'm not sure that that would apply to this particular bill's provisions.
That's fine.
So Any other discussion at this time on this bill from members of the committee? Senator Holmstrom.
Yes, thank you. So one concern I have is when we take away that local control and the ability to do that, how do we address, in the metro areas, that's great. Buffalo Lina clinic shooting happened, and within like a minute and a half, we had officers there in town. On the other side of my district, it's 17 minutes on average for an officer to arrive. In northern Minnesota, it could be 30, 45 minutes. And in those areas, I know that schools are directing and authorizing staff to carry in defense of those children. Is there not a concern for what those response times are? I mean, if this body and if this legislature isn't willing to provide officers on staff and SRO at every school, aren't we taking away the most basic rights to defend those kids in schools?
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. Do those schools have school resource officers?
Not every school.
Senator Holmstrom.
But I mean, if there's, sorry,
Cwodzinski.
sorry, Mr. Chair, sorry, committee members. But if they're 17 minutes away, it would behoove that school district to have a school resource officer on site for that situation that hopefully will never, ever happen. I don't know what to say. So, I mean, unless the sheriff has something to add. Thank you.
Senator Holmstrom.
To the sheriff, what do you charge a school for an SRO?
Sheriff.
I don't have that number off the top of the head, but he does make valid points. You know, not every school does have a school resource officer. Again, I want to go back to when people do not have them on their person, and consistency about safe storage is very important. And no, not every school can afford a school resource officer, and I think that that is a very valid point. What I want to reference again is safe storage of those firearms when they are on school property, whether it's a teacher who leaves it in a bag, and because they're not carrying them on their person, there should be extra securities in place to delay, if not stop, anyone who's trying to get a hold of them that should not have them. There needs to be some kind of security plan in place for that. Thank you.
Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Sheriff. Senator Cwodzinski, so this appears to also apply to private schools, is that correct?
No, it doesn't.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you. No, it does not.
Senator Holmstrom.
It just says school property. I don't see it where it's limited to only public schools.
I'm looking to.
Senator Cwodzinski, it looks like earlier portion of that statute does define school property to include private property.
Oh, okay. Yes, it does.
And the grounds.
Chair Latz.
Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Chair. So, Senator, with that knowledge, my concern is if we look at just yesterday, Temple School in West Bloomfield, Michigan, had a active shooter, another instance of Islamic terror, attacking a Jewish school. Private security, armed with weapons, opened fire and eliminated that target. They saved the lives of the 140 children in that school. That's private security. That's just yesterday. This feels like very irresponsible language to put on private schools who are hiring private security. And it feels like a very unfair thing to do to rural schools as well. Thank you. Go ahead. Chair Latz.
Senator Cwodzinski.
No, a no response.
So council has advised upon review of the statute that it appears at this time private security would not be authorized under the existing statute.
That was my understanding, Mr. Chair.
Under current law, the principal could give authority for private security to carry on school grounds, but under the proposal, that authority would not exist.
Chair Latz.
Senator Holmstrom.
I guess moving forward, would you be willing to work with me to clean this up before it hits the Senate floor?
Perhaps,
Senator
I'll leave it at
Cwodzinski.
that, yeah, just perhaps.
Thank you.
Senator Holmstrom, I'm a little bit confused because now you're an advocate for local control. But earlier in the day you were not, so I'm trying to figure out where maybe it depends on the proposal before us, whether local control is going to work in favor of the outcome or against the outcome that you prefer. Senator Holmstrom.
I think that in this situation, it makes a lot of sense to protect our children. That's my primary concern here today. Removing the rights of parents to protect their children in city parks is also in pursuit of that. I'm not a purist on local control. I am on protecting kids. Thank you.
I'd like to see local control in protecting local municipal elected officials and people who are in municipal buildings and on municipal properties as well. Any other comments, Senator Verbatim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski. And I just wanted to thank Sheriff Witt for the work that you're doing with the Youth Community Advisory Board. I think that's such a great idea to bring in the voices of our young people and our students, that you heard them directly. We had a student come and testify before us today, and this is turning into a bill. Just great work. We should do more of that here.
We do have an effective date to add to the bill. Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair and members, yes, the bill doesn't have the standard effective date for criminal laws generally. So after line 3.25, insert the head note would be effective date, and the text would read, this section is effective August 1, 2026, and applies to crimes committed on or after that date, period.
Senator Clark moves that amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Not seeing any further discussion, Senator Clark moves that Senate File 3572 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on Education Policy.
Senator Latz,
Senator Swat.
roll call.
Wait. There will be a roll call. Senator Cwodzinski, did you want to make any final comments before we vote?
I have three very rapid, quick things to say. First of all, I'm sorry to the chair for what you've gone through in the last couple hours. None of us ever deserve to go through what you've gone through. So my heartfelt appreciation for all of your public service, and know that the majority of people in Minnesota applaud and respect and admire us for our sacrifices that we make to hold these positions to try to better people's lives. So thank you, and know that. Second, I just want to, before Senator Holmstrom and I meet, how'd I do? Okay, on the pronunciation. Before we meet, I just want to, I will come into the meeting, know if we do meet, if we have time, that we have a constitutional duty to help our public schools and not our private schools. So just FYI on that front. And thirdly, if there's anybody from Annunciation here, know this, that a man much wiser than most of us in this room in 1863 said that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God will have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not vanish or perish from the earth. And maybe that's the lesson that the parents from Annunciation, when Abe Lincoln said that at Gettysburg, who would have thought that all these years later that we're still trying to reach that theme of our country. So thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski. On Senator Clark's motion, all those in favor say aye. Oh, roll call. I'm sorry. There was a roll call. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been thinking about the discussion today, and I have to admit, Senator Holmstrom has brought up an issue that I'm concerned about, and that is our outstate schools that may be far away from a law enforcement person, or we hear often outstate schools are needing a lot of money to just keep their doors open. consolidation is options that they are employing, but due to parochial interests, they don't really want to do that. I am concerned about not having absolutely no protection for a student body that is far away from law enforcement. So since we're now prohibiting school administrators to not designate staff with at least a simple defense mechanism, I came in here thinking I would vote for the bill, but I can't leave a school defenseless. So I'm forced to vote no. And I just wanted to explain that to the public.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for voicing that. And I think in your packet, I do want to make note that the school principals associations, the school superintendents associations, they've all provided letters that say they want this bill. So, and there's all 340 some school districts are represented by those bodies. So, but I appreciate that your concern. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer.
Thanks for the conversation, Senator Cwodzinski. I guess I'm more concerned not so much about the school principals. I'm more concerned about the parents of those children that will be an easy sitting duck target.
Clerk will take the roll.
Chair Latz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Uma Verbaden,
Yes.
Senator Limmer, Senator Clark,
Yes.
Senator Holmstrom,
No.
Senator Kroon, Senator Kroon, Senator Pappas,
Yes.
Senator Seeberger,
Yes.
Senator Westlin,
Yes.
Senator Westrom,
No.
Senator Kroon,
There being 6 votes in favor and 3 opposed, the motion prevails. Senator Limmer, you have 2 bills up, both of which include Sheriff Witt as testifiers. What order would you like to go in? Sheriff. Are okay, because we have the sheriff here and she's on the next 2 bills, we're going to have those bills heard and get the sheriff back on our way to protecting Hennepin County, and then Senator Champion's bill will be up after that. And as far as I'm aware, we do not have any public testimony scheduled for either of the next 2 bills, so maybe they'll go fairly quickly. Senator Limmer, we want to start with 3828, requiring about storage of loaded firearms.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we're going to distribute that to the members. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what the bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 3825 expands Minnesota's negligent firearm storage law. Under current law, a person commits a gross misdemeanor if they negligently store or leave a loaded firearm where a child is likely to gain access. This bill adds persons prohibited from possessing firearms, such as felons, domestic violence offenders, perhaps those that are deemed and ruled mentally incompetent, to the negligent storage rule. Liability applies if the gun owner knew or reasonably should have known the person could access a firearm. The bill simply makes it clear what constitutes negligent firearm storage. And as you mentioned, I have Sheriff Witt here for testimony.
Sheriff Witt.
Good afternoon again, long time no see. No. I would just say I'm also in support of this bill. Just comment at the last one, you know, with firearms comes a great sense of responsibility, and that includes storing them and keep them safe from children or people who should not have them. So once again, yes, I am in support of this bill and urge that it's passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any discussion or questions from members of the committee? Senator Limmer, you're on the hot seat, but it must be cooling off for you.
Must be, must be.
All right, we do need to add an effective date. Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair, members, and again, it's the standard criminal effective date. It would go page 1 after line 14 and also page 1 after line 20. Insert. The head note is effective date, and the text reads, this section is effective August 1, 2026 and applies to crimes committed on or after that date, period.
Senator Limmer moves adoption of that amendment as described by council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? No. Motion is adopted. Senator Limmer, any final comments before we take a final vote? The intention is to move this bill to the Senate floor.
Mr. Chair, I think I've adequately explained the provision, and I would so move the amended bill.
Senator Limmer moves that Senate File 3825 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion prevails. All right, Senate File 2228. This was heard during the previous committee hearing on this matter and was laid on the table. So Senator Limmer moves that Senate File 2228 be taken from the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The bill is before us. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We didn't quite make it last year. However, the need still is real for added funds for VSET funding. As the public may not know, VSET means Violent Crime Enforcement Teams. And this is asking for an additional $3.5 million in fiscal year 2026 to be appropriated from the general fund to the Commissioner of Public Safety. Minnesota VSETs are specialized law enforcement units. They're composed of officers from various local, state, and even federal law enforcement agencies who are focused on investigating and combating violent crime, especially those on gang activity, firearm offenses, drug trafficking, and other serious criminal activities. Right now, there's 21 current VSETs operating throughout the state. This is more importantly addressing the increase in opioids and other illegal drugs into our state, which often couple themselves with cartel involvement, human trafficking, and other concerns such as that, all of which raise concerns for Minnesota's health and safety. I'd like to introduce Sheriff Witt to explain the need for such a bill from her perspective.
Sheriff Witt, welcome back to the Judiciary Committee.
It's like I never left. Thank you, Chair Ladd, Senator Limmer, and committee members. So this time I'm here to speak about the Violent Crime Enforcement Teams, otherwise known as VSETs, and the critical need for additional funding to support their continued effectiveness. VSET funding is critical to support 21 Minnesota task forces' ongoing efforts to combat violent crime and address the fentanyl crisis that is devastating our communities. Starting in 2022, approximately one person died every single day from a fentanyl overdose in Hennepin County. Excuse me. As a result, our task forces turned their attention to fentanyl. In addition, we focused on seizing volumes of drugs that affect the drug supply in our area. Rather than focusing on making a large number of arrests for smaller cases, we began tying those smaller cases together into bigger ones, reaching the top tiers of criminal enterprise. Make no mistake, Minnesota is a corridor for drug and human trafficking. The results speak for themselves. While individual drug arrests have decreased, we have made significant increases in seizures of drugs, weapons, and other illegal goods. Since 2022, statewide, VSED pill seizures have tripled, and powdered fentanyl seizures have doubled. In terms of value of seized goods, VSED teams provide an estimated 600% return on investment through the seizure of illegal goods. Every dollar invested in VSED teams takes $6 away from human trafficking, gun trafficking, and deadly drug smuggling. Despite these successes, we are facing a critical challenge. Technology costs have increased dramatically while VSED funding has remained stagnant. The only people that is benefiting are those that are continuing to prey on our communities. Without adequate funding to keep up with the rising cost of technology and to keep up with the criminals, frankly, and our essential resources, our ability to continue making these gains will severely be compromised. For these reasons, we have formed partnerships with state task forces, talked with DPS, and specifically advanced legislation to address this important need. I want to thank Senator Limmer on behalf of our office and all the task forces across this state for leading on this request. I hope this committee can find the necessary funds to make this happen this year. We simply cannot afford to leave ourselves vulnerable to those who are intending on preying on our most vulnerable people in our communities. Thank you for your time, and I will stick around for your answers, or questions, I should say. Thank you.
Oh, we'll give you answers too, no doubt. All right, we do not have any public testifiers on this, and no one signed up asking to testify on this bill. So I will open the floor to the committee members. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Senator Umu Verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the bill, Senator Limmer, and your continued testimony, Sheriff Witt. I was just curious how this funding may enable folks to work on non-fatal shootings. I know we're also hearing a bill on that a little bit later in this committee hearing. In St. Paul, that's something our police department was able to focus on, knowing that retaliation kind of leads to further gun violence, and that focus was able to really bring down gun violence as a whole. I think that's an important piece of addressing violent crime. So if you could just speak to the ability to focus on that with this funding.
Sure.
Thank you for that question. So the VSED funding is separate from the non-fatal shoot teams. There are discussions in Minneapolis, Hennepin County in regards to having or forming non-fatal shoot teams. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It comes back to funding. It is expensive to fight these crimes that are occurring in our cities and counties every day. And that is the conversation that I will continue to have with the city of Minneapolis. As people may or may not know, all the resources that I'm throwing in that city alone, and yet there's 45 cities in my county, it makes it very tough, but everything comes back to funding. And again, the only people who are benefiting off of improper or underfunding law enforcement are those that continue to prey on our communities.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Chair. More of a comment here. I really applaud you, Senator Limmer, in doing this. One of the most effective ways that we can lower gun violence is getting criminals who use gun violence as a tool off the streets. This bill does that. It gives you the tools that you need to do that. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you bringing the bill. Please vote yes.
As Senator Limmer knows, we have worked on a bipartisan basis on funding this, the VSET teams when I've been chair and when he's been chair, so appreciate the work on it. We do need to update the fiscal year reference on line 1.5 from 2026 to 2027, according to council.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer moves to adopt to amend line 1.5 by deleting 2026 and inserting in its place 2027. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. Senator Westrom? Not voting. The motion prevails. Senator Limmer moves that Senate File 2228 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate Committee on Finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. Next up, Senator Bobby Joe Champion. Usually on time, this afternoon was a little bit early, and now we are getting them right on schedule.
Well,
Senator Champion, Senate File 3901 is before us today. Why don't you go ahead, we're distributing the bill and the summary
right.
and the attachments to it. And by the way, while people are getting set up, I should note, committee staff or committee website, when we opened up for public comment, received over 1,000 emails. Not on this bill, but on all the agenda that we have here today. So kudos to our staff for organizing and distributing the emails, assigning them to the right bills, making them available to the public and to the committee members to review as we consider these bills. Senator Champion, what do you have to say about 3901?
well, first of all, good afternoon to you, Mr. Chair, as well as the committee. I am here to discuss and put before you Senate File number 3901. And just for context, I started thinking about whether I should jot down a list of mass shootings in schools that we've had this year or even last year or even in 2024. And I opted not to go through each and every one of them because I think that this unfortunate trend in our country is well known. We know that here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that we had the unfortunate mass shooting at Annunciation back in August of 2025. I believe that I'm correct. And we are still reeling from that unfortunate set of circumstances that happened there. The unfortunate thing about that incident is that it happens far too often, and I think it's important for us to do something about it. And that led me to having a conversation, or at least a conversation that I had with Dr. Tim Childs, who's a well-known scientist and patent holder, also someone who is listed in the Who's Who, but also he's a resident of Minneapolis and North Minneapolis in particular. And what you'll hear from him is that he experienced that there was a mass shooting, I think it was at a college or university, and his daughter was there. And he sought to figure out, what can I do to even protect my daughter? And so Senate File number 3901 is a bill that focuses on providing proactive information for gun safety in our community. The legislation supports early detection to assess for and prevent and respond to visible and concealed threats before they can reach our schools. Working with the Office of Justice Programs and in consultation with the School Safety Center, Senate File number 3901 will create 8 pilots, 1 in each congressional district, for schools to utilize a school safety security system to proactively detect seen and unseen weapons. This legislation will provide an evaluation of the school's security system with a report back to the legislature to measure effectiveness. As we have seen, proactive information, understanding what weapons or threats are before they enter schools, is essential to the safety of our children, teachers, and staff. Every moment counts for law enforcement and school officials to know where threats are located and to actively respond. I've seen this weapon detection technology firsthand. I received a photo of the threat seconds after it was detected by the camera or radar, a phone call alerting me that a weapon was detected, and also witnessed how the system can lock doors and set off alarms. I believe, and I hope that you will agree, that Senate File number 3901 is important to provide first responders and law enforcement the knowledge on threats before students, teachers, or staff can be harmed. In your packet, there is a one-pager that outlines the school safety threat assessment pilot project. You'll also see that there are letters of support from Joanne Clark, Shakopee Chamber of Commerce, Metropolitan Economic Development Association, also known as MEDA, Northside Economic Opportunity Network, also known as NEON, Stair Step Foundation. You'll see also a letter of support from the Minnesota Gun Owners Law Center. And last but certainly not least, I received a letter and a note this morning from an Annunciation parent. And she emailed a letter of support directly to me. And I hope I won't embarrass her. That is from Caitlin Goff. And she sent me this note, and she talked about, actually, Caitlin Lang. I see that sometimes that there's a email difference here. But she talked about being a lifelong Minnesota resident and mother of 3 sons who attended Annunciation Catholic School. And she's writing, and she wrote to support and to share her support for this Senate File 3901. With that, I just gave some context, the importance of prevention. We know about intervention, but I'll now turn it over to my testifier, who is Dr. Tim Childs, and he can tell you a little about himself and then also about this important security product.
Dr. Childs, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Latz, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I first want to thank Senator Champion and Senator Draheim for sponsoring this important bipartisan legislation. Schools are vulnerable targets for bad actors and people intending to do harm to our innocent school children. I know this all too well. As a father, I receive the phone call that no parent should ever receive. On June 5th, 2014, my daughter Christina was having lunch with her friends in the student union. After she got up to leave, a gunman came in and shot her friends who were sitting at the table with her. That call, that incident, caused me to repurpose my life work. For more than 30 years, I have been working with the U.S. military and our allies on advancing weapon detection to locate weapons before they reach our troops, fighter jets, military bases, airports, and other military assets. After receiving this call, I knew my team and I needed to repurpose the military-proven technology to help keep our students, our schools, our children, and our community safe. Our technology utilized millimeter wave technology, like the scanners at the airport. However, instead of a passive airport scanner where you walk into a chamber, where the chamber then scans you, our system is proactive. So we can scan for weapons outside of the school building. This is combined with intelligent cameras to detect visible threats. By combining these two technologies, we can search for seen and unseen weapons, alert first responders and school officials when a weapon crosses the school property. The system automatically send text messages, make phone calls, lock doors, divert buses, and set off alarms in seconds, sometimes tenths of a second. We program the system to follow the school safety plan and protocol. Proactive notice is vital when every moment counts. Our system is discreet. It attaches to the eaves outside the building or high up on the poles in the parking lot. So most people do not notice it. However, children, staff, and public feel that they are entering a welcome and safe environment. Our system is also safe. and meet all of the government safety requirements. The system network is housed within the firewall of the school district, so the data is protected and secure. While we are in high demand by other states and allied countries, we are a solution developed and built in Minnesota, for Minnesota, to protect Minnesota. We invite anyone interested in school safety to come and see our solution firsthand in Minneapolis. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. While we have you at the table, let's see if anyone from the committee has any questions directly for Dr. Childs. Senator Holmstrom.
What types of industries are we currently using this technology in, or have you seen it implemented in?
Dr. Childs.
Yes, in addition to the military and
You gotta say, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
And then Senator
and Senator Holmstrom. Yes,
Holmstrom.
Holmstrom.
Let's call him Senator New Guy. That's what he calls himself, so we'll just adopt that. It's easier.
Yes. In addition to the military, we have actually done use of our system. In fact, it was used at the first level of monitoring for the first presidential debate at the Firearms Forum in the last presidential election. We've also have put it in schools here in Minnesota. We also have utilized it in another state congressional capital and elsewhere, yes.
Senator Holmstrom.
Just one follow-up. It sounds like great technology. If a school were to implement it, what does their annual cost to maintain a program like this run?
Dr.
Sure.
Childs.
Senator.
It's no problem.
Chair.
All you got to do is
Mr.
say,
Chair.
Mr. Chair, Senator Holmstrom, and then
Mr. Chair.
that way the record is clear and we can keep track of all the conversations. We don't talk over each other.
All right. To the chair and Senator Holmstrom. The numbers will vary, but it's quite affordable. Also, you can have financing and so forth. But the CFO can give you those numbers, but I can assure you it's affordable. Yes.
Any further questions for Dr. Childs? Thank you, Doctor. We're going to have some public testifiers come up. We have actually only one person signed up, Terry Rawson, who I believe spoke earlier today. Maybe not. Come on forward, please, and you can have a seat next to Senator Champion. Welcome to the committee. Thank you. Just go ahead and identify yourself and let us know what you have to say.
Chair Latzers and fellow committee members. My name is Terrence Rawson. I am a pediatric nurse for more than the last 2 decades. I am also a father and a grandfather, someone who has lived through the kind of tragedy that this bill is designed to prevent, very much like Dr. Childs. August 27, 2025 started like any other day and quickly became a nightmare. A panic phone call from my wife, a more panic phone call from my daughter, excuse me, searching for answers about her youngest child, 6-year-old David. With help from coworkers, we learned he was at HCMC because of well-coordinated EMS response, likely already in surgery to save his life. Throughout my career, I have worked in several areas, including with children facing mental health crisis. They come through EMS, they wait in the ER. Sometimes it's days before they can be stabilized or placement can be found for them. When a person is in crisis, there are signs, but often no system in place for someone to step in. We need a system. This bill opens doors to something more comprehensive, solutions that catch concerns early before they become tragedies. Threat assessment, including risk screening, social service follow-up, can identify students in need long before violence occurs. Early warning systems can equip students, staff, and families to report concerns behavior. Coordinating with EMS can deliver life-saving care to many children, like my grandson and many of the children at Annunciation that day. A statewide pilot lets us study what works across school contexts, decisions grounded in evidence, not just one that looks like security. Lastly, I have seen what a bullet can do to the human body. I have seen what that same bullet can do to a family. Now's not the time to sit and talk. Act before the next visual, before the next funeral of a child who deserved to grow up. So often we sit and wait because we believe that something like this will never strike our family. I ask that you act now, not wait till a tragedy hits your family like mine. Please advance this bill for David, for all those children, all the children in Minnesota who deserve to learn, play, and worship free from gun violence. Thank you.
Mr. Dawson, thank you, and I just made the connection between you and your daughter that testified earlier, so we mourn the loss of everyone that's associated with Annunciation as well.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Dawson at this time? Rawson, I'm sorry. All right, thank you. You may return to your seat then. And we'll open up the floor for discussion by members of the committee or any amendments. Council, do we need any amendments to this one? We're all good? Okay. Any questions or discussion from members of the committee? Senator Umo Verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, just a comment, and thank you for bringing forward the bill, Senator Champion. I want to thank you, Mr. Childs, for just sharing your story. I'm really sorry for your loss, as well as Mr. Ross and really all the families that are here today. One thing that's been sticking with me since this morning is hearing Mr. Moisky say, like, asking us, begging us to just try and do anything. And I think this is something that we can try, a pilot that we can put forward to hopefully save lives. And you've got my commitment to try anything we can do to prevent this from happening to more families.
Any further discussion from members of the committee? I'm not seeing any. So the motion from Senator Umo Verbatim is that Senate File 3901 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate Committee on Finance. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails.
Thank you, committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Champion.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Childs.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee.
Okay, next up is Senate File 4200. Senator Gustafson is on her way, but we will pass out the documents to members of the committee. Senate File 4200, Senator Gustafson, please describe your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill clarifies Minnesota's definition of a trigger activator so that devices designed to dramatically increase the firing rate of a firearm are clearly covered under existing law. In February of 2024, in Burnsville, Minnesota, Shannon Gooden fatally shot police officers Paul Elmstead and Matthew Rue and firefighter paramedic Adam Finseth while they were responding to a domestic violence call. Investigators later determined that Gooden fired more than 100 rounds using multiple firearms, including an AR-15 style rifle equipped with a binary trigger or similar rapid fire trigger device. Gooden was prohibited from possessing the firearms, and several of the weapons used in the attack had been illegally straw purchased for him. My original bill contained both the change to Minnesota Statute 60967 as well as an increase in penalties for straw purchases. The bill before you today simply ensures that Minnesota law is clear about how these devices are treated.
All right, why don't we go to public testimony on this then? We have one person signed up to testify, Moira Day. I think I was told that's the way to pronounce it. I hope I got it right. If I'm wrong, I apologize. With the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Go ahead and pronounce your name for me, if you would, and go ahead and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mariah Day with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. I understand it's a challenging name. NSSF is the trade association for the firearms industry. Our membership includes Minnesota-based federally licensed firearm retailers. Our manufacturer members make up the firearms and ammunition used by law-abiding Minnesotans who are sportsmen, as well as for the U.S. military and law enforcement agencies throughout the state. We appear today in opposition to SF 4200, which seeks to put into effect the criminalization of certain legal triggers for firearms. We believe that treating these triggers akin to machine guns is inaccurate. As we've previously argued, a ban on the possession of these devices constitutes an uncompensated taking from legal firearm businesses and owners by the state and would be a violation of Minnesota citizens' Second Amendment rights as well. In March of 2022, the common trigger type known as a binary trigger was specifically cited by the ATF as a device that would not qualify as a machine gun component, as binary triggers do not allow a firearm to discharge more than one round through a single function of the trigger. However, despite the clear guidance from the agency responsible for enforcing federal firearm laws, the state of Minnesota still chose to adopt restrictions on these products as restrictive as the state's prohibition on machine guns. A binary trigger is a relatively expensive firearm component. The market value is in the $400 range. A statewide ban on these devices results in a loss of value to their owners and the need to purchase and install some other equivalent high-end trigger. The process requires a professional gunsmith, and it's not an easy or inexpensive process. We estimate the cost at $800 per firearm in total value lost, new components costs, and gunsmithing expenses. We've still seen no recognition by this body of the cost associated with this prohibition. We've seen no mechanism to control what would be done with the removed triggers and trigger assemblies. We question if there had been adequate consideration of the fiscal repercussions of this decision on the state and on the individual firearm owners who have hurt no one by choosing to exercise their constitutionally protected right to purchase a binary trigger, which the ATF has recognized as legal for years. There have certainly been many thousands of these triggers installed legally on firearms in the state of Minnesota in recent years. This action criminalizes thousands of Minnesotans, creates millions in costs to avoid criminality, and still leaves doubt as to the fate of the components and firearms in question. We would urge you to consider this prohibition and protect the rights of Minnesota citizens. Respectfully urge you to oppose Senate File 4200. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mariah Day. It seems to me some of the doubt about the legality has to do with the fact that after it was enacted in the past, it was challenged in court. And it's been in legal proceedings, so, but the people who challenged it are the ones who created the doubt for the last year and a half, or however long it's been. But be that as it may, we have to resolve how we're going to handle this today. I don't have any other testifiers. Any questions for Mariah Day while present at the testifying table? Not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay, no one else to. All right, so I've been discussing with council a question about the bill relating to the effective date, Senator Gustafson, and we were struggling a little bit because normally the effective date for crimes is August 1st following enactment, for crimes committed on or after August 1st. This is a little bit unusual because it was maybe in effect for a short while, then challenged, then languished in the court proceedings. I don't remember if there was a temporary injunction while it was pending in district court. The district court invalidated it based on the manner of the process in which it was enacted, and it's on appeal at the Court of Appeals at this time, I understand, with a hearing on March 25th. And then the very possibility of it going up after that. Whichever party loses may appeal it to the state Supreme Court. So there's some uncertainty here where there's certainly been ample notice that the legality is under question, but no clarity on exactly what the long-term outcome is going to be. What I'm going to propose for your consideration as the chief author is that we modify the effective date so that the bill itself and the prohibition becomes effective the day following enactment, but it apply to crimes committed on or after July 1st. Normally we do an August 1st one. I'd be comfortable moving that up because of the sort of public notice that the legality of these devices is under question. So I'm comfortable with a shorter time there. I don't know when in the session this would end up being passed if it becomes law. But I'd be comfortable with a July 1st effective date. You know, the reason we do it is so people have ample notice as to what conduct might constitute a crime that could theoretically put them in jail. That's, I guess, my take on what I think it ought to look like, but you're the chief author. What do you think about that conversation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a good suggestion, a good amendment, and I say we go forward with it.
All right, Senator Holmstrom wants to move the amendment? I'll look to my left. Senator Umu Verbaeten moves the amendment. We'll have council provide us with the exact language. Okay. Okay, Mr. Backus is going to read the amendment to a slightly different language that accomplishes the same thing.
Mr. Chair and members, it would be on line 1.8, delete the day following final enactment and insert July 1, 2026.
And members, then this complements the first paragraph in there declaring that the law is reenacted retroactively and without interruption. So the language that Mr. Backus has proposed should accomplish the notice provision before any crime gets committed. Senator Hoover Bitten, is that your motion?
So moved.
Any discussion on the motion? Senator Holmstrom.
Sorry, I wanted to clarify. So you're saying that this is going to clean up the January 1st, 2025, the retroactively part as well?
No,
Okay, thank you.
no, but it does provide notice that there would be no crime committed, or no crime in effect unless the act is committed after July 1st, 2026. So the public would have ample notice, in ample time, I would suggest, to modify their firearms if this becomes law. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. All right, now to the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Senator Holmstrom, or did you have your question answered? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Gustafson, tell me how this works. And if enacted, an owner that might be owning a weapon that has a binary trigger, what would their duty or responsibility be if passed?
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Limmer. They would not be allowed to have that.
So,
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Gustafson, what do they do with that? Do they, well, you tell me what they would do with the weapon that they're now restricted to own.
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Limmer. Well, it would be up to them to make sure that they're not in possession of something that's illegal.
So, Mr. Chair, the way I see it, if I can create a timeline, somewhere in the past, a citizen buys a gun with a binary trigger. Along comes the legislature and they say, you're breaking the law. You can't own such a weapon. There's no provision to reimburse the citizen for that weapon. Things like this probably range from anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a piece. I don't see a budgetary item to reimburse the person that would now have a restricted personal property. So to me, that clearly violates a government taking provision. Government is now restricting the use to the point that they have to rid themselves of the property. It essentially is a government taking. I suppose they could go outside of the state and sell it, but I'm not quite sure if the state of Minnesota allows us to carry a weapon outside of a state border. I'm not sure about that. I suppose you could destroy the gun, but then that renders it useless and it does affect ownership, the use of the ownership of the weapon. So why don't you tell me, is it a government taking or is it not?
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have seen several other states who've done this. Just a quick search leads me to California, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Washington, D.C. And so this isn't new. It's not a radical idea. It's not even the first state to do it. And yet all of those decisions have held up in court. So I understand the concern, but this really is a public safety bill. And this was brought to us under a pretty tragic situation. And so we're trying to honor that. And this came at the recommendation of a law enforcement agency. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Limmer.
we do a lot of things to honor the issues of our citizens. But to do that, we usually try to keep it within the parameters of our U.S. Constitution. And so I'm a little concerned about this. And What level of court decision were those states that justified legislation like this? Did it go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, or was it even Court of Appeals, or is it just district court?
Senator Gustafson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Limmer, and I say this with all respect, I have not looked into every state's court process. I can barely keep up with ours. So I'm a pretty busy Minnesota State Senator. That's where I'm focused on. But with all of those states and the decisions being held up, I think that concern has been addressed.
All right. Well,
Senator Limmer.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I would imagine issues like this are being followed by very interested people, and I would imagine the issue is not yet resolved. It'll continue to wind its way through the courts. I just think that once you deny someone's lawful use of their own personal property, it would be equivalent to a government taking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on this? I am not seeing any. Closing comments from Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. I appreciate the time and consideration.
Senator Umu verbatim moves that Senate File 4200 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The motion prevails. All right, next up. Senate File 3347. Senator Clark and your testifier, County Attorney Choi, come on forward.
Bring Clark to us.
There we go, Senator Clark, crossing the river to bring in an expert.
Thank you, Chair Latz. I hate to correct you, but I represent the east side of Minneapolis, of the river in Minneapolis.
Oh.
Except for Cedar Riverside, which is west side, just like west side St. Paul. So.
Oh, there you go, sitting on 2 seats with one tuchus. I got you.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Chair Latz. Chair Latz and committee, I bring you Senate File 3347, the Minnesota Clearance Grant Program, which does 3 things. It reinforces the importance of investigations as a law enforcement priority. It recognizes that catching violent offenders is the key to disrupting a cycle of violence. It helps increase law enforcement agencies' cross collaboration. And it helps reinforce our fundamental need and desire for justice. This bill creates the Minnesota Clearance Grant Program, which awards grants to law enforcement to investigate and examine violent crimes caused by non-fatal shootings of a firearm. Historically, police departments have prioritized fatal shootings of a firearm, and this provides funds that will, investigate non-fatal shootings. Today, we've heard lots of testimony about the need, the sort of public health approach that we need to take to addressing gun violence. We heard the stunning testimony of folks from Annunciation, and we heard all of the pieces that we can do to reduce gun violence, whether it is addressing magazine size, whether it is addressing the types of guns that are out there, as well as where we can investigate more intelligently. This bill addresses the intelligent investigation and puts resources into a program that is very similar to one that Attorney Choi will share about the success that they have had in Ramsey County. I also have Will Cooley here today as well, who is able to provide testimony and answer some questions as well. Thank you, Chair Latz.
Welcome to the Judiciary Committee.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Latz. It's really nice to be here again on this issue, and I want to thank you and Senator Pappas for giving me the floor when you were doing the markup on your omnibus bills back in the 2023 legislative session. But I sat here at this table advocating for some funds on ways in which we can invest in solving more non-fatal shootings. And what happened is there wasn't a specific provision, but you and the legislature and Governor Walz provided a significant amount of public safety dollars that went throughout all across the state of Minnesota. Cities and counties were recipients. So intentionally in Ramsey County and in St. Paul and in our surrounding suburbs, we intentionally used that money for a project that would improve the solve rate, the clearance rate of non-fatal shootings. At that time, the city of St. Paul had a solve rate of about 35%. And we started this project right after we got those funds and accepted them in the fall of 23. And in 1 year, we were able to improve our clearance rate to over 70%, 70.1%. That is now like a national model, and we're getting lots of requests for technical assistance, and the concept was very simple. It's investing in intentionally saying out loud that we want to do better in this particular area. And the money that was utilized, what the St. Paul Police Department did was so, I want to give credit to Mayor Carter and Chief Henry because they did something that was hard. Because the tendency will be, and this is one of my things that I'm worried about this bill, is that police departments will use it for overtime and they'll supplement their homicide investigations. What we did in St. Paul, and we treat every non-fatal shooting as if it were a homicide. Is not able to participate because they are dead. In a non-fatal shooting, oftentimes that's the case because the victim does not want to participate in the investigation or the prosecution because they're fearful of retaliation. And so knowing all of that, the city of St. Paul used their portion of those public safety dollars to create a standalone unit led by a specific commander, and there's about 5 or 6 officers that are doing that investigation. We dedicated a prosecutor. The sheriff's office got an additional investigator, and they're working on gun recoveries. We created an emergency victim witness fund of $800,000 to help address some of the basic needs of our victims and witnesses of non-fatal shootings. And we don't give up when the victim says that I don't want anything to do with this investigation or prosecution. Because of the improvement of the clearance solve rate, a doubling, 35% to over 70%, we have had historic reductions in homicides in the city of St. Paul, and violent crime in Ramsey County is down significantly, 54%. And we lead the nation on many of those indicators. And so I'm just so passionate about this concept that we need to be focusing on what we are not solving. And if we can do that collaboratively, working together, we can make, I think, really positive things happen. So this bill, I think it has a statewide focus, which I think is great. This is something that should be replicated. And I just want to make sure that St. Paul is not penalized for their success, because they will also have a cliff at some point. We don't need more resources in my office. The sheriff's office doesn't need more resources because we've absorbed that into our budgets. But I think St. Paul needs a little bit more time to make sure, because they've made such a huge shift of making a new unit, just like a homicide unit. So I think one of the most important things is this, and I hope that as this bill moves forward and you will provide the money for communities across the state, that the money does not go into more overtime for homicide investigators. They're already burnt out. And so asking them to do more isn't the solution. It's actually figuring out ways to increase the capacity. And I really think that we need to have the conversation in Minneapolis whether or not there are enough police. Because if you don't have the resources to do these investigations, you will never, ever move these numbers. And so a part of this is actually providing the money, but then another part of this is making sure the capacity is there. And I think St. Paul has proven, as has Denver, that if you put intention and leadership and resources, that you can actually move the needle on this. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you, County Attorney Choi, and thank you for all of your proactive and cutting-edge approaches to crime solving and problem solving in the communities. I know you've been at the forefront on sex trafficking innovation and on prostitution innovation and a variety of things. So I admire the office and your work for the ways in which you are leading the state and the country in trying to reduce crime in the communities. Mr. Cooley, were you also going to testify? Go ahead and tell us how you...
Yeah, Will Cooley, Policy Director, Minnesota Justice Research Center. Thank you, Chair Latz, members of the committee. In 2024, 47% of violent crimes reported to police in Minnesota were solved, less than half. This is 3 percentage points lower than it was in 2014. In Minnesota, we are underfunding, understaffing, and neglecting the most important thing law enforcement can do to prevent crime. Solving violent crimes sends a message that criminal behavior will not be tolerated, which deters future offenses, provides a sense of justice for victims, and builds public trust in law enforcement agencies. Along with our partners, and I want to point to the letter from the Center of the American Experiment in your packet. We worked with them the whole time on this. We're putting forth a series of bills to enhance investigations and create the next generation of great investigators. This bill is one of the most important steps the state can take to solve, as the other testifiers have noted, stops these cycles of retaliation by identifying perpetrators and holding them accountable. It signals to the community that law enforcement cares about the victim regardless of that person's background and holding them accountable. It's about the victim regardless of that person's background or their circumstances. This is also a matter of racial justice because when violent crimes go unsolved, it disproportionately affects marginalized communities. Smart investments in effective investigations may even yield the double dividend of reducing incarceration and crime at the same time. In polling, 73% of Republicans, 71% of independents, and 83% of Democrats supported this bill. Thank you, Chair Latz. Thank you, Chair Latz.
Thank you, Mr. Cooley. Are there any questions from members of the committee for our testifiers? Senator Pappas and then Senator Hoover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just skimming over the bill, I noticed on page 226, 2.26, it says for overtime for investigators and support staff. And I think that's just what County Attorney Choi warned against, is that it needs to be a separate unit and not just pay for more overtime in the homicide department. So I just wanted to call that to your attention, Senator Clark.
Chair Latson, Senator Pappas, thank you. Yes, and the intention is that it's new investigators. So not just it's not just additional time for homicide investigators, but a whole new focus. So yes, I'm circling it. Thank you.
Senator Hoover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Clark, for bringing forward the bill. I'm so happy to see my colleague from Minneapolis highlighting the great work in St. Paul. And thank you. I want to add just to the great work that our County Attorney Choi has been doing also on traffic stops and cash bail, youth justice and diversion work. The list goes on. I'm really, really grateful for your leadership. One of the things that I heard you mention, Attorney Choi, is just addressing some of the basic needs of victims. Could you speak more to that, what it looks like, and the funding that was put forth to address those needs?
County Attorney Choi.
Yeah, so we have allocated, with the portion that we got, I think Ramsey County got $6.1 million as part of that public safety package, and I think about $1.7 million was used for this project, and we used a big part of the Ramsey County money. $800,000 of the $1.7 million was put into a victim witness emergency safety fund that is administered by the Sheriff's Office. And what they do is, if there is a CN or a case number from any police jurisdiction within Ramsey County, and they are working with a victim or a witness who is fearful of being retaliated against. And that's one of the main reasons why victims of non-fatal shootings, because of this cyclical violence that we have, that we suffer from in our communities, that they're worried about the retaliation, so they don't want to participate. So the theory behind that change is that if we could just address the underlying basic needs of safety. And so the way that this money has been used is often it's allowing somebody to get out of town. Maybe transportation expenses and lodging expenses for a time being, to just get to a safe place after they have recovered from their injuries, or for a witness for a time period. And then the theory would be that if we could just address those basic needs around safety, that maybe they would be in a better place to possibly corroborate or participate in the investigation that would be being taken part by the police investigator. So that's how the money is being used. And so I think just more recently, we have started using that fund much more, but we still have resources in that fund that will continue on. But I think that's an important novel type of thing that we want to try. By the way, we also have, because of the success of the work that's happening in St. Paul Ramsey County, we have a lot of academic research interest. So the University of Pennsylvania, they will be conducting an evaluation of, I mean, obviously the numbers are very obvious. The clearance rate went from 35 to 70%. But they'll also be evaluating the use of the emergency funds to determine whether or not this is actually making a difference. They'll be looking at some of the methodology used by the investigators. But again, I think it's very straightforward. We just treat every case as if it were a homicide and that the victim isn't going to participate. And if they do, that's a bonus, because that could help corroborate things and help us prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Senator Mover-Baden.
Thank you. I think this is why it's just so helpful to have you testify before our committee. And as we're continuing to work through the bill, I know Senator Pappas already mentioned where overtime was in the bill language. The use of a victim witness emergency fund is amazing that there's going to be some studies on that now, further evaluation. But I think we'll just want to make sure we have guidance in this language for the department as they're evaluating applications for people to be using best practices, and really looking at what has worked well in St. Paul. The data is really clear, right, with the clearance rate going from 35% to 70%. So thank you. I just want to make sure we include that in the language.
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Chair Latz. Thank you, Senator Mover-Baden. I am always happy to praise St. Paul. And I think part of the praise that's in this is that, you know, you're seeing multiple levels as you've described. It's almost the public health approach of it's not just one silver bullet. It's how do we manage this dilemma? It's how do we find different ways to chip away at each of the little pieces that help drive down our crime rate. And that's what this really does well.
Any further discussion or questions from members of the committee? Senator Clark, the appropriation provisions in the bill are blank. This is on page 3 at the bottom in section 2.
Yes, Chair Latz, I have two minor changes on both that and then up at 3.7, I've got a correction to make as well.
Why don't you tell us what you'd like to see as changes there?
Yes, so on line 3.7, it says biannual. I'd like to change that to annually. Later on the next line, it talks about reporting for the prior fiscal year, so want to ensure that the report matches that timeline. So in line 3.7, strike the letters BI in the word biannually.
All right. And what would you like changed in the appropriation section?
And in the appropriation section 3.26, strike the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words up to and. So getting rid of the fiscal year 2026, changing the R to is, and in the blank appropriation put 3.5 million.
And also strike and on line 26, 3.26.
Yes, sir.
So we'll start with the dollar sign. And
Yes.
what was the dollar amount you wanted in there?
3.5 million. And where that Chair Latz, where that come from is that it's examining historically what Ramsey County has provided, invested in the program, and then essentially doubling that.
And then on line 3.25, make the word appropriations singular.
Yes, sir.
Let's say read appropriation.
Yes, Chair.
And also, there's a base appropriation blank on line 3.28.
Yes, 3.5 million there as well, though I would, if we had standard language about tying it to inflation, that would be great, but we don't generally do that.
We do not.
Standard language.
I knew that Sandy might like that. Sorry, I knew that Senator Pappas might like that, Chair.
Fiscal staff, do we need to even make a reference to a base appropriation if the base doesn't change between the initial appropriation and what's going forward? Mr. Turner?
Mr. Chairman and members, since the appropriation is the second year of the biennium, if we stay silent, that will automatically indicate that it's a base appropriation at the fiscal year 27 level.
Okay, so to make this as clean as we can, on line 3.28, after the period, delete to the end of the line and delete all of 3.29?
Yep, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so does everyone understand the changes that are going to be offered as an author's amendment by Senator Clark? Any questions about those? Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Chair Latz. Senator Clark, so we calculated this based off of the cost of Ramsey County, and we're multiplying it by 2. Why 2?
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Chair Latz. Thank you, Senator Holmstrom. I think that's a fair point. In short, it's to begin the conversation to start saying, all right, state of Minnesota, what is the broader interest on this? And so, yes, is it simple math? Yes, but I think it's to in year one go, let's see how the state responds to this, and then be able to learn from that. We know it's a program that has worked well, and I think it'll take a couple of years to begin to get legs around under it.
Senator Holmstrom.
So I just want to clarify, the needs of this program go beyond just Ramsey and Hennepin County, correct?
Senator Clark.
Chair Latz, Senator Holmstrom, yes, this is a program that I think is needed around the state, and it is not intended only for those counties.
Any further questions or discussion? On Senator Clark's author's amendment, as has been described. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Any further conversation about the bill as amended? Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Clark, you mentioned that you were aware that that might be an issue on line 2.26. Did you want to delete that line then?
Chair Latz.
Senator Clark.
Chair Latz, Senator Pappas, I would actually defer to Mr. Cooley on this question.
Mr. Cooley.
Yep, Senator Pappas. So this bill is directed towards non-fatal shooting investigations, not towards padding, homicide, although those have needs as well. But one of the things we're finding from St. Paul and Denver and other places is when these non-fatal shootings happen, the investigator has to leave the house and go there immediately. 2 a.m. it could be, right? In the past, the problem was they would get, the next day they would pick these up. If it happened on a Friday, the investigator wouldn't even look at them till Monday. So that's where the overtime costs come in, because we're expecting the investigator to head to the scene and treat it as a homicide right at that moment.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion about the bill? Not seeing any. Senator Clark moves that Senate File 3347 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on State and Local Government. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hello, Senator Kroon. Motion prevails.
Thank you.
All right, members, our final bill for the day. Senate File 3631, Senator Westlin. Senator Westlin, would you like to put the bill in the shape that you wish to discuss it up front here?
Yes, why don't we take care of that, Mr. Chair?
Senator Westlin moves the A1 amendment as an author's amendment. It's a delete everything amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Senator Westlin, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this is a timely bill today, given the fact that we have had yet one more threat made against a legislator just today. This bill would, in essence, eliminate the right for permit to carry holders to bring a firearm onto the Capitol complex. It does create a carve-out for retired peace officers who carry pistols as authorized by and in compliance with the reference code, and who are employed by our Minnesota Senate or House of Representatives working in primary function with the Senate or House Sergeant at Arms. It also does have a provision that if one is in one's motor vehicle or outside their vehicle but placing the firearm in their trunk, that would not constitute a violation. I sit on the Advisory Committee for Capital Area Security, and I've been on that committee with Senator Limmer now actually for several years. And we had a lengthy conversation this year, in particular following the assassination of Melissa Hortman and Mark Hortman, and the attempted assassination of our colleague, Senator Hoffman, and his wife Yvette, and the attempted and thankfully unsuccessful assassination as well of their daughter. In the process of our work on ACAS, we have certainly had many discussions about the increase in threats. On November 21st in our meeting, DPS provided information that they have seen a substantial increase in threats to lawmakers and elected officials here on the Capitol complex. On that date, November 21st, there had been 58 threats that were serious enough to be elevated to be assessed by the BCA. That was not the totality of threats, but that was the number of threats that were elevated, and that exceeded by far the prior year. We now have a full-time threat investigator at the BCA because of the ongoing issues that we have with increases in threats of violence to elected officials, public officials. Just in the past couple of weeks, our colleague, the senator from Glencoe, received death threats from a gentleman who then called the Attorney General's office, threatening to execute everyone at the Capitol. This gentleman was arrested, but actually he was also subject to a petition for an extreme risk protection order that was filed by the State Patrol. He was arrested, and he had in his possession 9 firearms, including an AR-15 and 45 boxes of ammo. Just last week, we had reports that Speaker Demuth was threatened by a Hugo woman who continued to leave threatening messages even after she was confronted by the police. After our working group met to address the topic of gun violence prevention, there were some proponents of the Second Amendment who apparently disagreed with statements that I made. They were misrepresented as well. And in the comments, someone asked if they had posted my home address yet. We have heard about the threats to Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and on and on and on. We heard earlier today from Dr. Peterson from the Violence Prevention Project regarding the increase in political assassinations from 2024 to 2025, that there have been more in that time period than in any comparable period prior to that. As part of the work that we have been doing around Capitol security, the Department of Public Safety commissioned an assessment, a security assessment by the Axtel Group. It is available on the ACAS website. I encourage everyone to read the executive summary that is available to the public. I also had access to, as Senator Limmer did, to the private 400-plus page detailed non-public assessment. I just want to share a few things that were included in their public summary. They note on page 4 in the introduction of their security assessment, the state of Minnesota has a long tradition of maintaining openness within its public institutions, and the public's ability to access government buildings is a defining feature of the state's civic identity. At the same time, the state has a responsibility to ensure that public business can be conducted safely and without disruption. They go on to say, in their assessment of the current security environment, beginning on page 9, the security environment surrounding government institutions has changed significantly in recent years. State capitals throughout the country have experienced increased public activity, larger demonstrations, and substantial growth in the number of threats directed toward public officials. Concerns regarding threats toward public officials have increased in Minnesota and elsewhere. At the bottom of the page, the report goes on to say, taken together, these factors define an operational environment that requires a balance between accessibility and preparedness. The Capitol complex cannot fully restrict access in a manner similar to a federal facility, yet it cannot respond effectively to current risks without meaningful safeguards. When Minnesota was compared in the Axtel report to other capitals, we were one of a handful of states that do not prohibit firearms. One of a handful. We were one of a handful of states that did not do weapon screening. We now have weapon screening, and that is one part of the problem. But most states prohibit firearms inside their Capitol buildings, and I mean red states and I mean blue states. The Axtel report found that Minnesota is among the states with the least restrictive entry conditions. And they estimate that over 300,000 individuals visit our Capitol every year. When we're talking about safety on the Capitol area, Mr. Chair and members, it is not just for the protection of members. It is not just for the protection of our staff. It is, in fact, for the protection of the hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans, including thousands of Minnesota school children that come here every single year. In terms of constitutionality, because I suspect that'll come up, the 2022 Bruin decision continued to affirm that the sensitive places doctrine, specifically identifying government buildings, schools, and legislative assemblies as coming under that definition, and they affirmed the Heller decision on this point. It is settled law. We can prohibit the carrying of firearms on the Capitol complex. I think the question is, will we? There was an op-ed in the Star Tribune on March 8th, just this past week. I don't actually know what day it is anymore, by Jill Burkham. And she describes that emboldened and brazen behavior that is resulting in ever-increasing threats. She says it's as if the two, and these, she's referring to the person who threatened Speaker Demuth and the person who threatened Senator Gruenhagen, it's as if the two felt entitled, if not unrestrained, to menace office holders and then proceeded as if there was no price to pay. This problem is not going to get better. I'm sorry to say that we are in a time where public service now carries a certain element of threat with it. And I know my colleague was only joking when he said he lowered himself by coming to public service, and I know that was a joke, and I took it as such. But this is the privilege of a lifetime to be here, and I know you feel that way, Senator. It is a privilege of a lifetime to be here. I think we've had less than 2,000 people serve in the Minnesota State Senate. And serving here and serving our communities should not mean taking our lives into our hands. It should not mean that people who disagree with the things we say, regardless of what side of the aisle it is, nobody should feel the right to threaten our lives. Whether it is a threat against Leader Demuth, whether it is a threat against Senator Latz, it is completely unacceptable. But what are we prepared to do about this place that is our seat of government, this place where people come to petition their government, this place where we have rallies on every side of every issue, this place where thousands of school children come to tour this beautiful complex, to tour that beautiful Capitol. We have a duty and obligation to not be lagging behind what other states have already done, especially in the environment that we are in. We have an incredible Capitol security staff. We now have weapons screening. Many people have come through our weapons screening with a permit to carry. We have members of this body who carry, some very openly. Even in hearings where we have people who have lost their child to gun violence. I do not feel safer knowing that there are non-law enforcement, non-security people, I don't know who they are, carrying firearms in this Capitol complex, and I can share with you that the majority of Minnesotans feel the same way. The majority of Minnesotans not only want weapons screening, but they support the ban of firearms on our Capitol complex. I wish this weren't controversial. And I suspect I will be hearing the opposition to this bill. But I think that we live in a time where we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the members of this body, we have a responsibility to our staff, and we have a responsibility to every person who comes here to provide a safe environment for them. And I am not convinced. I do not believe that our environment is safer by allowing individuals to bring firearms onto our Capitol complex. And for all of those reasons, Mr. Chair and members, I believe it's time. I believe it's time that we join the majority, I believe majority of other states who prohibit firearms on their Capitol complexes. And I will leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Brian Gosch, I understand you signed up to testify. Come on forward with the NRA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is Brian Gosh, lawyer with the National Rifle Association. Happy today to testify on behalf of this bill. Thank you for having me, and I loved how open this Capitol has been in the years that I've been doing this. It's the only Capitol I work in where I get to sit right next to the proponent of the bill, if I'm the opponent or vice versa. There's never, at least between me and the proponent or opponent, we're not jarring with each other, we're not threatening each other, we don't look at each other meanly, I hope. And so I've always loved that process, and I've bragged about it, quite honestly. I've bragged about how easy it is to access to Capitol. I will tell you, it hasn't been the easiest Capitol to access that I work in. The Capitols in Cheyenne and Helena are easier. You know, for example, the way we used to do things, the public could come through the doors at the top of the steps. They could come to the doors below the steps. Lobbyists had access to side doors before and after hours. We've lost that now. The public didn't. I believe legislators probably still do. And now there's a metal detector system that never used to be here, but I used to brag about how open it was. You know, people come in and express their voices, and it was a thunderous noise in the rotunda, either for an idea or against, sometimes against my company. It was a little intimidating, but it was nice to see that you could do that, and it was expressive voices, and it wasn't anger, it wasn't hostility, it wasn't threats, it was just people expressing their First Amendment right to express their desire on an opinion. The Capitols in Helena and Cheyenne also allow capital carry. You can constitutional carry in the Capitol in Cheyenne. There are no problems. There haven't been any problems. The neighboring states, with the exception of one, allow capital carry. So Wisconsin, also no metal detectors in Wisconsin. They allow capital carry. Iowa allows capital carry. South Dakota allows capital carry. North Dakota does not. They had a Dakota Access oil pipeline going through, and there were people who really didn't want it to go through, and so there was some aggressive protesting going on, and they decided to put in metal detectors at that time. I hope we don't go down this route. I've always thought how we've done things here worked really well, and that I know there's been problems elsewhere, but we haven't seen those problems on the Capitol complex. I'm hoping that we keep it more open and accessible. You know, this morning was really cold, and it's the first time I've had to wait outside in the cold and the wind before I could even get in the Senate office building. And then you have metal detectors where if you present your carry permit, they don't honor it right away. They say they have to call dispatch and look it up. And so sometimes there's a 15-minute delay while you're standing there waiting for them to verify you. I mean, best analogy I could have would be like if I go to the store and I present a credit card and they say, well, I got to call first just in case between the last time you use it now, you're a prohibited person, or this card was canceled, or you're behind, and we got to verify your card's still good before we're going to let you slide it. We're going to verify you are the person whose name is on this card. And so it's not real smooth the way things are working. I would love to see it go back to the way it was. Where the states I work in, where capital carry is allowed, again, I have to emphasize that there just hasn't been a problem. There wasn't a problem in the Capitol complex in St. Paul, at least none that I'm aware of. And I think that would have been pointed out if there was. And so I think, and one point I made earlier, I'd make my final point as well. So, you know, this is a big Capitol, bigger than the other Capitol, probably twice as big as the other Capitols I work in. And so when you park in one location, of course, and if you have a single entry point, maybe you had to find a parking spot as far away as you can imagine, then you have a really long, cold walk in these early months of session. That can be a problem, but also if this bill passes, you're disarmed from the time from where you park to the Capitol and back. And sometimes I've been here till almost 3 a.m. watching the House floor back in the day when they were dropping the plow and slowing things down. It was taking forever. And so you're going back to your car at 3 a.m. and it's dark. You can't really see well in some of those areas. And I wouldn't want to be disarmed from that point of view. So with that, I'll stand by for questions if you have any.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Gosh.
Yeah.
Any questions from members of the committee? I am not seeing any. All right. Thank you. Oh, Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you. You had mentioned that there's a concern walking from vehicle to the Capitol. Do we have any evidence of the transition between destination and vehicle that is more dangerous?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Gosh.
I don't have any data on that. I can tell you how I've felt at times when all of a sudden you come around a corner and you're running into people you don't know who they are, what they're doing there, and they don't seem to have a purpose because they're just standing there. And so it would be nice to have, the ability to engage in self-defense if I needed to.
Mr. Holmstrom, are you good? All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gosh. Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say, we're still open, and proponents and opponents can still sit at this table next to me. I attended a rally this morning in the Capitol in our rotunda, and it was a loud and boisterous rally. The proposal here is you just can't bring your firearm in here. I guess I would say too, Mr. President, I probably buried the lead a little bit, but the one thing during our ACAS deliberations on and our debrief from the Axtel group, Chief Justice Hudson asked what would be the number one thing of all the recommendations that they made to us, what was the number one thing that they recommended that could be the biggest bang for our buck? And without any equivocation, it was weapon screening and not having weapons on the complex. That was the one thing, if we couldn't do anything else, that was their number one recommendation. And I understand the testifier speaking about how he felt. But there's a lot of people who come here who also feel that they want to be safe. And I would share a story from Senator Cwodzinski, was here earlier. When we were contemplating whether or not to install weapons detection systems, Senator Cwodzinski approached me one day and he said, initially I was really not sure I supported that. And he told me the story of going to, I believe, to meet with some high school students, and there were two young teenagers, two teen women who were kind of talking back and forth to each other. And he said, "Oh, you seem to have something to say. What's on your mind?" And one girl said, "Well, we'd love the Capitol and we'd love to come down there, but we don't feel safe." And Senator Cwodzinski informed me that in that moment, this man who loves our government and loves the openness and loves our Capitol said to me that in that instant that he changed his mind. Because every kid who comes here dealing with all of the things we've heard about, all of the things that our kids have to deal with, they need to know that they're safe here as well, at the seat of our government and the seat of our democracy in this state. And so the feelings of other people also matter in terms of feeling safe at this complex. And I believe, as I stated earlier, is the majority of Minnesotans think that we should not have guns on our Capitol complex and are shocked over and over again. I've had conversation after conversation that people are shocked to hear that we allow firearms. And we are the outlier, Mr. Chair. They've managed to do this in places like Alabama, I think West Virginia. I don't remember off the top of my head. There are many, many red states who have instituted firearm prohibitions and instituted weapons screening, and we are behind the curve.
Any further discussion from members of the committee? Senator Seeberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Westlin. And as you know, and my DFL colleagues know, I'm a no on this bill. For all the reasons you stated, that is precisely why I carry. I do not feel safe. I haven't felt safe since June 14th, and I do not feel safe against a tyrannical government since the shooting of the murder of Alex Preddy. I think people who, I'm going to back up, folks that go through permit to carry training, the permit to carry training is fairly rigorous, and those who go through it and develop demonstrate a proficiency, understand the risks and the benefits, and carry in a responsible way and have their permit to carry, those aren't the people that you have to worry about. Unfortunately, I think a few of our colleagues that make it widely known that they carry are the cause of bills like this. My colleagues who have to make a point of letting everyone see that they carry are the reason why these bills come before us. And I think that's unfortunate because it puts the rest of us on the defensive. I would just soon not let people know that I carry, but now you know that I do. So I'll be a no on this bill, but I thank you for the discussion.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify.
Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the bill's being laid over. I'm not sure that we're having a vote on the bill today. I appreciate, Mr. Chair and Senator Seeberger, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your thoughtful comments. We all just land differently on some of these things. We land differently on what provides us a sense of safety and security. And I guess the one thing I will say is the alleged Minnesota assassin, we don't know for sure, but he had a security company that he provided armed security. That seems to me he was probably a permit to carry holder. The Sandy Hook shooter was a lawful firearms owner. The Pulse nightclub shooter was a lawful firearms holder. The Aurora shooter was a lawful firearms owner. Las Vegas, lawful. Annunciation, lawful. And the thing is, they were all lawful firearms holders until the day they decided not to be a lawful firearm holder and commit a crime. And I trust Senator Seeberger, but there are people who come in here that I don't trust. People who support the Second Amendment but are making threats. There are people that I do not trust. And I am not in a position to make a decision for the thousands of people who come here who we can and cannot trust. We all responded to what's happened in different ways, and I respect the fact that you are responding to this in the way that makes you feel the most safe. And we disagree on that, but I really respect our disagreement on this point. Thank you.
Senator Westlin, what we do with this bill is up to you as the chief author. Take a vote or lay it over. But before we get to that point, we'll see if there's any further discussion from members of the committee. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Westrom, the very reason why some people are fearful in this place, the one that you've brought up, are actually making my point. I've been here for a long time. There's a lot of emotion that gets played in these buildings. And quite honestly, there's a number of reasons why people who work in these buildings have a concealed carry permit. Because they darn well know that they can't get a trooper to defend them when someone sticks a gun in their face. They have to defend themselves at that moment. And the tension and the pressure is building. We've noticed that. I've talked with lobbyists. Lobbyists have to walk sometimes 2 to 3 blocks away, now even further because they can't go to the nearest door next to their parking lot. They have to walk around a building in a crime zone that surrounds this Capitol. And most of them are women. I have had stories where it's actually been a foot race to their car in a parking lot because someone else on the other side of the parking lot is trying to get to them before they get to their car. I hope I never, if this bill passes, I hope I never read a headline that someone was assaulted or killed or raped 100 feet away from the Capitol building, let alone in this building. There's a lot of people that roam around this building late at night while we're having our committee hearings that really have no interest in what we're doing. There are people from, well, I don't know where they're from, but they come around, they walk through these buildings. I've talked to the security people, I've talked to the troopers, I've talked to the blue shirt guys, and there are guys that roam around and they are definitely threatening type people. And the people that are working here late at night and they have to walk through basically empty corridors are very fearful. Sometimes they have their hands in their pocket because that's where their gun is. Now, you know and I know based on the security committee that we're both on, we have increased trooper presence. We've increased law enforcement presence here in the Capitol. We now have the metal detectors. But quite honestly, the metal detectors are stationary. There are weaknesses in that system that I won't talk about publicly. But quite honestly, I cannot recollect anyone that's been in the Capitol building with a concealed carry permit over the 20+ years that we've had that designation in law, that there has ever been a problem in the state Capitol. And I pray there never will be. But I believe your bill, in the attempt to make us safe, will endanger others. And I wish I could change society right now. I know you share that idea too. But I don't think we will. And I know for a fact that law enforcement and the troopers that we have here are not going to be walking with us every step of the way as we make our ways to and from different locations in the Capitol complex. I get conversations as this debate has come up on this date. I've had more and more conversations with state employees and lobbyists than I ever have had before in 20 years, and they are very fearful that this provision would become law. I'm very concerned, I understand human nature probably as much as anyone else, but late hours, empty hallways, shadowy, dark, cold paths to a parked car 2 or 3 blocks away is not conducive to a crime-free zone. And those people have a right to be defended and by all means to do it themselves if they absolutely had to, because law enforcement is far away. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Westlin, I think you can respond. We have Senator Holmstrom, and I think that's it as far as I can tell in terms of comments. So do you want to respond to Senator Limmer, or do you want to wait until after Senator Holmstrom?
I'll wait.
Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your comments. And I don't disagree that this is actually a very dangerous job. We've learned in the last year, and from what we learned from testimony today, being a public official is a dangerous job, and even more so lately. And to your comments on doxing, you're welcome to jump onto my doxing bill whenever you want. But the provision in here that I'm concerned about, based off of testimony today, is that you want us to put our firearms in the trunk of our vehicle, which the Hennepin County Sheriff just testified was, in fact, not something she would recommend. Do you have a response to that?
Mr. Chair, Senator Holstrom.
Senator Westlin.
I think what she actually said was that it had to be securely stored in the car. She didn't say you shouldn't put it in your trunk. What Sheriff Witt testified to was that if you're going to have it in your car, it should be securely stored. And I would be more than happy to add that to this bill. In fact, I made a note about storage requirements. The language in here regarding motor vehicles and placing the item in the trunk comes from, I think actually it came from that same statute. So I would be more than happy to add something. I certainly believe securing firearms, especially if they're in your motor vehicle and not on your person, that would be a great idea, and I would be happy to add that amendment to this bill.
Senator Holmstrom.
To that point, I would just state, as somebody who's done extensive research into securing firearms in safes, these aren't a lot of these lots where people are parking are not patrolled. Most safes that could fit in the back of a car, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to pop open with basic hand tools. That's not really a safe solution. If somebody sees me put my gun in my vehicle and watches me walk into a job where I'm at for 8 hours, there really is no way to genuinely secure that firearm. But to the point that this will somehow make us all safer really confuses me. I understand that law enforcement is here, and I appreciate the sergeants and the law enforcement that work to keep us safe. But the reality is, there is no magical government solution to this problem. Your safety is primarily your responsibility, and my safety is primarily my responsibility, and the responsibility of my family as well. So to come and make the statement and try to make the policy that I can no longer be responsible for my own safety is really an absurdity, and I think an affront to the people of Minnesota who want to come here, advocate for their issues, and do so in a safe manner. Again, I petition that the most safe way to do that is to allow us to lawfully and responsibly carry our firearms. I think that the opposite of that is only making us less safe and prohibiting us from being responsible for our own safety and more reliant on individuals who cannot be there at all times. I think it's very irresponsible. Thank you.
Senator Westlin, closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, lots of different feelings about a lot of different things here. We have increased security around the complex. We do have security cameras and drive-throughs by security patrols of all the parking areas. I do trust them to protect me. I trust our sergeants. I trust our troopers. I trust our Capitol security. Anyone who desires it at any time of the day or evening can be escorted to their vehicle. I'm going to reiterate again, the majority of states do this. We are not breaking new ground here. And if other states are able to do this, we are able to do this. I think, Mr. President, we are at 4:22. We could probably have a very lengthier discussion about this. I think I've probably said everything that needs to be said about this. Again, I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate the differing opinions and the different ideals of what feels safe for each of us. But based on what I think Minnesotans have indicated in polling in this state, the majority of Minnesotans support this, and I will look forward to further conversations on this topic. And I believe, Mr. Chair, I think the intention was to just lay the bill over.
Senator Westlin, chief author, has indicated her intention is to lay the bill over. Senate File 3633 as amended is laid over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you, members.
3631.
I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. Members, that concludes our agenda. Let me just check and see if we have any final announcements for today. Our next hearing will be Monday, March 26th, 12:30 at our Capitol G15. What number did I say?
26.
March 16, 2026. Next Monday, you get 2 days off, then back to work.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
before we adjourn, I just really want to thank the staff for doing such a fabulous job keeping all the documents straight, and thank the pages, and thank Nicole and Kira. I knew it was a K word, Kira. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Pappas.
And thank the chairman.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Thank you all for the conversation and the work today. With that, we are adjourned.